Hey, welcome everybody to the Thursday night DBC Inc. Facebook Live. We are so happy to have you join us. And we have a special guest tonight. I'm sure you recognize him. And that is the amazing, straight out of Indiana, Matt Miller. Matt, how you doing tonight?
I am doing great. It's finally getting warmer in Indiana. Just got done messing around in the woods out there and came in out with all of you. So excited to get to spend some time.
Fantastic. Did you do any tick checks when you came in after messing around in the woods? Are you all right?
Probably need to do that. Yeah, that's a smart idea.
Yeah, okay. Just checking. Hey, as you are joining us, we would love to know who is here. Throw your name into the comments. Let us know where you are watching from. And as usual, Facebook Live, we'll pick a winner to be able to get a free book. So we would love to have you let us know who you are or where you're from and all of that. Now, Matt, you have on a pretty slick new shirt there. What's going on with this? Let's see this shirt. What does this say?
Yeah, it's AI is my new teaching assistant. I feel like that's one of the big benefits from AI for teachers is the ability for it to do some things that we find kind of monotonous that we don't want to have to do. So yeah, that's kind of what I'm going with here with the t-shirt.
Hey, we have Ashley from your home state there.
Fellow Hoosier. How about that?
Yeah. Kristen, thank you so much. You are super nice to say that. Yes. We appreciate that. And Brian, glad that you're joining us as well. Thank you so much. And my good running friend, Laura, is here so much. Or thank you so much for joining us. Now the book is sitting there. But before we dive into the book, I promised in the last Facebook Live that I would come on here and give a little bit of an update on Tara. And so if you've joined us for some of the last Facebook Lives, you know that Tara was going to have a really big surgery this week. And she's going to come on here eventually and in one of the next couple of weeks, and we'll do a full interview of her and we'll get all the details. But so on Tuesday, Tara had a hysterectomy and they cleaned up a bunch of other issues going on. And her surgery was very successful and took a little time to come out of anesthesia and all that. But once she was out, she's back, she's up. And now, as probably you could all imagine, now the biggest issue is holding Tara down and making sure that she doesn't do too much too fast, because she's like, I'm feeling really good. Like, I think I could do, I'm starting to clean up around the house. Like, please stop doing anything.
Yeah.
So having Tara be still is the biggest issue, as we all expected. And there, look at this. She is here in the comments, feeling good enough to participate in Facebook Live. Tara, we are glad to see you and glad everything went so well. So that's our little update on Tara. And like I said, we'll get more details on a Facebook Live right from her at some point. So we have more people. Oh, look at this. We have gone international.
Whoa.
International, yes, so good. And we have an expedition science author, Becky Schnexer, join us. Becky Expedition Schnexer is joining us. That's fantastic, so good. And yeah, she's well enough to be here tonight. Awesome. Okay, Matt, let's cut right to the chase. You see the book right there? I'll hold it up right for everybody right here. This is it. AI for Educators. It just recently came out. It has been smashing the charts on Amazon. People are getting into their hands now. They're reading it. They're learning unbelievable stuff. They're seeing all kinds of great feedback. We just had a podcast episode on it, by the way. If you want a full over-hour conversation about AI for educators, go to the Dave Burgess Show, episode 30. Fantastic podcast episode. I'm already seeing great comments about that too. And the numbers are fantastic on that show. So, but we have you here tonight. So first of all, congratulations on publishing your sixth book. Sixth.
That's right. I know. I can't believe, and we were talking about this on the podcast earlier. Like, if you had told me years and years and years ago, when you and I first met, when we started to publish Ditch That Textbook, if you would have said, Matt, we're going to publish 6 books together, I probably would have laughed in your face. Like, That just floors me. And this book really is unlike any of the rest of them. All of the other ones were like a big process of gathering things and lots of thinking and putting together and everything. And there was a lot of thinking and a lot of putting together on this one, but the timeline was much shorter because ChatGPT showed up in the world in November, and it caused a lot of us to just, our heads to just start spinning. And so, okay, so Laura, to kind of speak to that point, I just started learning about it and trying it and learning as much as I could about artificial intelligence, gathered enough of the basics to start to think about what the implications could be on teaching. And I wrote this great big long blog post laying out a bunch of the things I'd been learning and thinking. It just happened to be at the same time of the Ditch Summit, the Ditch That Textbook Digital Summit, my free online conference for teachers I do in December. And I got messages from people saying, hey, are you going to have a session on AI? And so I did. I pulled together a last second panel discussion. And so those conversations and all the stuff I was learning, I kept adding to that blog post, and I kept getting more and more and more stuff. And eventually I was like, this is a book. You know, all of the things that are in the blog post are just sort of like quick summaries of things. And there's a lot of processing and a lot of what does this mean for education and how can we prepare ourselves and our students? And there's just like all of those questions that we're left with. And so, yeah, that's how that worked out. And so, Laura, to speak to your point, how did you write? How fast did you write this one? I was working on like a 2,000 word writing goal every day for about 10 or 11 days. I didn't hit it like every single day, but you know, over the course of about 2 weeks, it was just like sit down, pull some things out of that blog post, expand on it, add some new things, rearrange, think, add more things to it. And then eventually I hit about 21,000 words as I finished up the conclusion. And I was like, yep, that feels about right. And the goal was for it to be a book where you pick it up and you go, oh, I can do that. You know, I didn't want to make like a super, super thick book where you were like, I need to spend 4 months learning about this. This feels like a textbook. You know how I feel about textbooks. This feels like a textbook. I don't think I can do that. So this is the thing that people have said about the book is I picked it up and I couldn't stop. I couldn't put it down. I read it in one sitting, you know, so then that was my goal, was to make a readable book that helped you process some of the things that you need to understand. It's not all like geeky tech talk. There's a little bit of that, but I try to translate it into teacher terms and everything. So anyway, long story short, that's kind of how the book all came together.
Yeah, I love it. And it was, I think so maybe the most complicated part of writing this, Matt, and tell me if I'm wrong, but you are very much aiming at a moving target.
Yeah.
Right. And so AI is developing so quickly. And so you had to take some precautions to make sure that you're talking about it in a way that is not specific to what's going on just on that particular day, on that week, but also kind of looking forward to how this is all going to transform and develop, and some evergreen ways of looking at this technology as it expands.
Yeah, you just used the word that I would describe for it, and that's evergreen. And I know that fits in the whole, you know, Dave Burgess consulting books premise, is that we want stuff that isn't just going to go in and out. And so, yeah, I talked about ChatGPT, knowing that probably at some point ChatGPT won't exist in the same form that it already does. So I tried to use general terms like AI assistant, artificial intelligence tools. But then what I also tried to do was not make it super tool centric, but like, how do we wrap our brains around this as teachers? How do we use it generally? How is it applied to class? How can we prepare students for a future where this exists? Like, all of these questions that we have are big picture questions that we need to answer. And so I dove a lot into that. So, you know, there will probably be other books that are more geeky and nerdy about the technology and the specific tools and all of that stuff. But, you know, if you just want a primer on what is artificial intelligence, how does it impact the classroom, how can I use it, and what does the future potentially look like? If you're looking for something like that, that's really what this book is all about.
Yeah. And I love that you address the fact that, okay, this is an opportunity to seize, but yet there are some legitimate concerns.
Yes.
And it's okay to have some of those concerns, and it's necessary to explore some of those concerns. And there are some questions that we need to be asking as this technology develops to make sure that we and our students are using it in an ethical way, in a way that truly serves us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there are lots of those questions. I think one big one we're going to have going forward is, what should we use AI for, and what should we use our human brains for? I know there's a big discussion about intellectual property, and if some of these artificial intelligence tools are making things in the style of someone who writes, or someone who creates images or music or whatever, then it's like, don't they owe them something for that? The creative community has very strong feelings about it, and so yeah, you're right. There's lots of concerns. There's data issues. There's representation. There's bias. There's lots of things that go into it, and instead of using those as excuses to not use any of this stuff, I think we need to educate ourselves on what some of those concerns are, and then have conversations about them. We need to talk to our students about them so that they're thinking about it, so that they have a complete, mature understanding of artificial intelligence when they start using it in their lives. But then we also need to have discussions among our staff too. Like, how can we use this ethically and responsibly? How can we ensure academic integrity while at the same time preparing our students for the very real future that AI is a part of? So you're exactly right. There's lots and lots of questions for us to think about and discuss when it comes to all of this.
Yeah. And so what I was thinking also is, like, for example, there's I think I heard you on another podcast actually discussing this, where you were talking about there's different ways to look at, say, plagiarism and intellectual property rights and things like. So what? There's kind of like different levels of it, right? Like,
right.
was the idea generated by ChatGPT, and then you expanded on it, or did you use ChatGPT to summarize? Like, there's kind of all kind of different levels of that. Maybe if you could kind of give us some thoughts on how to look at it in that way.
Yeah, what you're mentioning there has been the most popular part of conference presentations that I've done on artificial intelligence, just because I think a lot of times people get in their minds kind of like a black and white binary right or wrong view of artificial intelligence, and they think, oh, if kids are using it, then they're cheating. But we have to go back and look at, before we do any of this stuff, we have to make sure we look at definitions. For instance, plagiarism is a word that gets thrown around a lot. Well, what is plagiarism? Plagiarism is taking somebody's intellectual property and trying to pass it off as your own. Well, who owns intellectual property? It's humans. And so I really believe that some of the definitions that we hang a lot of these cheating conversations on, a lot of these definitions are going to change too, I think. So if plagiarism is based on other humans' intellectual property, well, where do we stand when it comes to stuff created by artificial intelligence? If you go ask ChatGPT this response that you just gave for me, who does this belong to? ChatGPT will say, not me. I'm artificial intelligence. I can't own it. So then it makes you go, well, if that's the case, then who does own it? And the best answer I've come up with that is that it's in the public domain, kind of like, there's lots of images, and when things go out of copyright after about 100 years, they're in the public domain, which means people can just use them without attribution, which, if you're not familiar with public domain, that feels like cheating, but it's actually lawful. So the question then becomes, if we can use that stuff, how do we use it ethically and responsibly? But also, how do we make sure that we're preparing students to bring value to the workplace and to bring value to the world, instead of just relying on AI to do everything? So to speak to what you mentioned earlier, one of the big discussions that comes around the whole cheating question is, how much AI assistance is okay? How much AI assistance is right? And I've got this chart. And so if you can imagine in this chart, there's a copy of it in the book, actually. and in my blog post, which you can find, by the way, at ditch.link/AI. So if you go to ditch.link/AI, you'll be able to see this chart. But it's like artificial intelligence created all the way down to human created. And so, like, who's doing the response to, say, an essay prompt? And so up at the top, it's like the student copied the prompt into artificial intelligence. The artificial intelligence wrote the essay, student copy pasted, stuck it in a document, and submitted it. And so I'll ask, is that cheating? Well, I think we can all say that that's probably not what we want, because the student isn't developing skills. They're not thinking. So if that's the case, let's go down to the bottom, which is human created. So the example down here, human created, is what if the student wrote the entire essay without ever consulting artificial intelligence and without consulting the internet, all just out of their own human brain, and submitted it? Is that cheating? Well, it's probably not cheating, but it's also probably not very authentic to the kind of work that they're going to be doing when they get out into the workforce. So that might not be exactly what we want. So if this isn't what we want and this isn't what we want, then the answer is somewhere in the middle. And that's where it starts to get tricky. So, like, if we come back up here to the artificial intelligence created, what if AI creates they create 3 responses with AI? They pull the best parts of it, adjust it as necessary, and submit it to the teacher. Is that cheating? What if they create a series of bullet points and then have AI drafted into an essay, adjust it as necessary, submit it to the teacher? Is that cheating? What if the student uses AI to get ideas, but then writes the rest of it themselves? You see, it's like there's all of these fuzzy areas in the middle where your school handbook probably doesn't have policies about this yet. And there was actually a school in Florida that started threatening to have kids not be able to graduate because of their use of artificial intelligence, which seems like they're kind of jumping the gun a little bit when you haven't had conversations about what's the appropriate way of using this. And also, how can we help students to know how to use it ethically and responsibly so they can in their future, because it is going to be a part of their future.
Yeah. And so what you just said there about being part of their future brings me to, and we went in depth on this in the podcast, my favorite quote. And the key part of that quote was, we can't look at the world through today glasses. We must use our tomorrow glasses. And you gave this wonderful example about kind of like looking at the world as looking at a student who's 10 years old right now, and understanding that, like, hey, the technology of AI now, like the ability of the AI now, like looking forward to what that's going to look like when that student goes to college or the workforce is just, it's unimaginable.
Yep. Yeah, you're right. And so I like to use that example when you, like you said, if we need to look at either we're doing school through our glasses, through the the real future that our students are going to experience, then we need to think about it in that way. Like you mentioned a student that's 10 years old right now. Let me go on that for just a second. If a student is 10 years old right now, in 8 years they're going to graduate from high school. And by the time they graduate high school, the AI as we know it right now will be 8 years smarter and 8 years more mature than it is right now. Give it another 4 years. After 12 years, that one student is going to graduate college and go out into the workforce. And so if that's the case, 12 more years of the development of artificial intelligence, what is that going to look like? And that is the key. And you're exactly right. We don't know, but we can start to project it out a little bit. And the key to that is using our tomorrow glasses, right? Looking at what is that reality potentially going to look like. And if we do a little bit of research and do a little bit of reading from the people who study the evolution of this technology, we can start to get a little bit of a picture of what that's going to look like. But I'll tell you one thing that it doesn't include, and that's creating a bubble where AI doesn't exist, which is what some schools I think are trying to do right now. They're trying to say, let's find ways to block it. Let's not talk about it. Let's not use it. Let's punish the kids that use it. They're creating this bubble where it doesn't exist. That's the past. That's today. You might even argue that's not even today glasses. That's like yesterday glasses.
That's yesterday glasses for sure.
Exactly. Yeah. So we got to look forward, I think.
Yeah. Hey, by the way, Ryan Reed, thanks for joining. Ryan just got his book, and so he said he's excited to read it. Monica, thanks for joining us as well. And I see also Vicki Wilson, Lead with Rounds author, is in here as well. So good to see you. And we really appreciate all the comments you guys are pouring in over on the side. Thank you so much for your feedback and for your commentary. Love it. So Matt, one of the examples, I'll give the short version of it. Again, it's episode 30 of the Dave Burns Show if you want to hear Matt and talk about it for over an hour. But I gave an example of something that happened last week in my house. And that was that Finn came to me and was going to be applying for a program, needed some letters of recommendation. Asked someone for a letter of recommendation. The person said, I'd love to do it, but will you put together the skeleton of the letter and send it to me? I'll personalize it and send it back to you. Well, and so Finn was like, will you help me write this letter of recommendation? And I said, ChatGPT, just plug in what program you're applying for and some things about you, and let ChatGPT create it. So in minutes, ChatGPT, Finn read it to me. It was unbelievable. It was so good. It was like, it sounded just like you would want a letter recommendation to sound, pulled together these key phrases that people look for and all this kind of stuff. Finn took that, personalized it a little bit, sent it off to the person. That person further personalized it, put in some examples that they knew from working with Finn, and shot it back, submitted, boom, there we go. And the amount of time and anxiety that saved was incredible. And then you mentioned that, like, well, this is something that, for example, high school teachers have to do all the time.
Yeah, you're right. Exactly. And I think that's that's a really practical use case that I think teachers can use on a regular basis. Use it for recommendation letters. Use it for lesson plans. Use it for discussion topics. Special needs teachers are starting to see the power in it to help write IEPs and like the rationale behind them, and all of that back-breaking paperwork that sometimes stands in the way of them actually working face-to-face with students. Like emails. If you get overwhelmed by email, you can have ChatGPT help you to do that. And I think your example with Finn is a really good example of sort of the role that I think AI is going to start playing in our lives. And that is that it's going to write the first draft for us, where in the past, now, of course, we can write our own first drafts, but we can ask it for the first draft of just about anything. Like we were saying earlier, an email, a lesson plan, a letter, a story, an essay, or whatever. We ask for that first draft, and then we look at it and we see what we like about it and see what we don't like about it, adjust it, personalize it, like you were saying, and then run with it. And we use it in the same way as if we created something on our own. The thing that AI has that we don't have is that it has looked at tons and tons and tons and tons of examples. And it's looked at all of the commonalities and all of the patterns and all of the lessons that it can learn from all of those about how it's done well. And it can make a pretty good guess about how it thinks that you're going to want it to look. And so if we ask it for that and we take that example based on, the entirety of, maybe not the entirety of all human written work, but a lot of it, we get this one example, and we're the editor. We're maybe not the drafter of the first draft anymore, but we're the editor. If we start to think about AI in that way, that it's going to write the first draft of lots of things for us, that helps it feel a little bit less like cheating and a little bit less like it's, like Skynet from Terminator, that's, I mean, there's, that may come one of these days, but it's definitely not here today. But yeah, that kind of stuff, I think, makes it feel a little bit less heinous in a way that sometimes we feel.
Yeah. Now, Matt, check out this comment from Ashley Johnson, and she uses it almost in the opposite way. where she's writing something down as like a first draft and then asking the AI to kind of like polish it or to see what AI would do with what she came up with. And that's like, and that's something that I hadn't considered. That's a very interesting use as well.
Yeah. You know, one of my favorite early examples of this being used with students was an example just like that. There's a teacher named Donnie Piercy who teaches in Kentucky. He was actually recently the Kentucky Teacher of the Year. And he took student work, threw it into ChatGPT. And when I say student work is like a story that one of his 5th graders wrote. He took the story and he said to ChatGPT, rewrite this as a nursery rhyme. And it did it. And the kid.
Hey, we have a little connection problem there. So I'm going to pop in here until Matt pops back on. I noticed that, Laura, you mentioned, sadly, will people use it to write blog posts now? Absolutely. I think that's a foregone conclusion that's going to happen. And I won't throw this author under the bus for sure, but I recently, maybe a couple weeks, I retweeted something from an author, and the author sent me a direct message and said, hey, by the way, ChatGPT wrote that tweet. I asked ChatGPT to write a tweet. I said something about the part of the book of my message that I wanted to put into this many characters and asked ChatGPT to come up with something, and ChatGPT wrote the tweet. So, Matt, are you back with us?
Yes, sorry about that.
Yeah, no problem at all. Okay, so Matt's back with us. Yeah, so Matt, I think maybe another piece of this as far as ethical use might be transparency. And so one of the things that you did that was very interesting in your book is at the end of each chapter, you included something that speaks to this transparency. Maybe if you could describe what that is.
Yeah, let's see if we can get it on the screen there. I called it the bot check. So I'll just to show you real quick what it looks like. There it is. The bot check is the part where at the end of each chapter, I reflected on that chapter and tried to figure out what percentage of that chapter was written by me and what percentage of it was written by artificial intelligence. And it fluctuated. Now, I was still sort of early days with ChatGPT, and I still had lots of thoughts about it. So it didn't fluctuate any more than maybe 80-20, I think, on one chapter. And mostly it was 90-10. But I thought it was important to put that in there just to model, hey, I am using this in my book. I am using it. But I'm also putting a lot of the work in myself, and to kind of like model the fact that, hey, this is, it's ethical and it's okay to use it in these ways if it gives you what you need.
Yeah. And so this, an interesting comment from Tara, if you let it do all the writing, doesn't sound real or like you.
Yeah.
So I've listened to several podcasts. One of the kind of new in things to do is to try to fool the audience. Like maybe the introduction of the podcast will be AI created.
Oh, yeah.
And then they'll say like, oh, and by the way, that wasn't me. That was all by AI. I can tell every time. Like if I'm a listener of that podcast and like, I'm like, hey, I can guarantee you they're going to tell us in a second that the ChatGPT made this, because like I can just sense it. So there is still that authenticity that comes from your voice, that need to personalize something and make it your own. And that's one of the things I love that you talk about too, Matt, is that, hey, these things are going to maybe take away some of the mundane tasks that we have around us.
Mm-hmm.
But yet all that's going to do is be able to elevate us to be able to contribute what is unique about us as humans and not have to worry about some of this, the mundane stuff.
Yep, exactly. I think when we talked about that on the podcast, it made me think of when I've been trying to make like a PowerPoint presentation to use with my students, and I'm out there on Google Images and I'm just like searching and searching for the right image. Or, I'm continuing to, like add new facts and things to that PowerPoint presentation. And it makes me go, at the end of that, is that what makes me special as a teacher? The ability to Google images and stick them up? No, it's not. So I can outsource that thing that doesn't make me, it isn't what's special about me as a teacher. And so that makes you ask the question, what is special about me as a teacher? Well, when I was teaching high school Spanish, what made me special is pulling storytelling into the practicing of Spanish and using my students as the characters. It was developing relationships. It was finding ways to connect things to their world. It was, all of those unique human things. That's what made me special as a teacher. And so if I can not have to draft every single word of a study guide that I'm going to give my students, that lets me put more time on what is uniquely me and what's special about me as a human Spanish teacher. So yeah, I think you're right. It's going to free us up from some of those things to empower us to do more of the things that are great about us, or maybe it's going to free us up to go home at a reasonable hour, not have to spend so much time at school, right?
Well, hey, don't go too far with this, Matt.
Right.
Yeah. No, so absolutely. And so maybe, some of these lower level tasks are going to be automated, which doesn't mean that we're not necessary. Doesn't mean that you are in the class as a classroom teacher are not necessary. It's not going to, we're not headed to a place of replacing teachers.
No.
And I think that's one of the fears that people have. And I don't think that's anywhere near on the horizon.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. This just popped into my head. I started thinking, well, what are some of the mundane tasks of being a teacher that happened in the past that we don't even think about now? If you ever look at the list of duties and responsibilities for the teacher of the one-room schoolhouse, it's like talking about trimming the wicks of all of the candles and bringing in firewood and, stuff like that. Of course, we don't have to do that stuff anymore because we have fluorescent lighting and we have heating, air conditioning units. And so, those things aren't that we free that person up from those things to open up more things. If you went back to that one-room schoolhouse teacher and you said, hey, what if you don't have to trim the wicks of the candles and you don't have to haul in firewood? They'd be like, oh my goodness, that would be amazing. I would be able to spend so much more time doing X, Y, and Z. We're doing the exact same thing on a different level here. This is like saying, what if we don't have to do the mundane stuff that we have to do today? You go, oh my goodness, that would be great. I would be able to do X, Y, and Z. It's kind of the same thing in a lot of ways.
Yeah. And also classroom instructional time.
Yeah.
If we can free up classroom instructional time with effective use of AI, then that allows us to include more creative projects, more, better use of our time directly working with students and students directly working with content and in creative ways, as opposed to some of the, drill and kill mundane stuff of instruction as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think we touched on this earlier too. When AI starts to do some of the basic things in all of our society, we're not going to have to teach those things explicitly in a classroom anymore, allowing us to kind of like level up to the next, the next highest thing in the order of, complexity and things that we want to teach our students. So, you look back at calculators, for instance, there was all of this talk, and I know there's been lots of talk about calculators as a comparison. Some people are probably sick of it, but, there's all this talk about, oh, you'll never carry around a calculator in your pocket. You need to know how to do things by hand. Well, guess what? Here we go. We've got like supercomputers in our pockets now. And so now we don't have to do all of the manual calculations by hand that took so long, because now we have calculators and we have cell phones and we have computers that do some of those things. So then what has happened to, say, math instruction? Because you don't have to spend so much time on that stuff, we're able to move up to the next highest levels of math. I like to think of it like the tide. When the tide comes in, all the ships are in the harbor. The tide brings all of the ships up. That's really what we're doing, is the water's just bringing the ships up even higher. I think that's another impact we're going to see out of AI.
Yeah, for sure. So Matt, you are about to get on a plane.
Yes.
And head off and talk about this very topic. Where are you headed? Where are you going?
I'm going to the ASCD conference in Denver. Never been to ASCD before, but I've heard really good things about it. And I'm excited to get to talk to these folks, people who think about, curriculum design and, designing instruction and, what does this look like on a school district level and a school level and everything. And then, of course, it all trickles down into the classroom. And, yeah, just being able to have those conversations with kind of a different group, pretty excited about it.
Yeah. And so I'm looking back for the comment, but I remember what the comment was. It's for Kristen. Oh, here it is right here. This was shocking to me. And true. I can guarantee you this is not going to be the case for long.
Right.
And so if it hasn't hit your school yet, it's coming. This is one of those inevitable things. This is not a fad. This is not fidget spinners. This is transformational technology that is going to change lots of things. And so really getting in on the front end of this and trying to get a grasp on it and kind of being proactive with how we look at this as whether you're a school leader or you're a classroom teacher working with kids, kind of taking that proactive approach and not having that, that we kind of went through this with social media at one point where it's like social media bad, block also, get kids off of social media, missing that opportunity for a lot to no, social media is going to be a part of their life. So maybe we as educators can play a role in shaping how they use social media in effective and empowering ways, and that we can shield them from some of the dangers of social media if we can talk about it. But if it's just blocked, we lost that opportunity. And that's the same way with AI. If you just block it and try to act like it doesn't exist, then we've lost that opportunity as educators to influence the conversation and to be a part of how they're going to use it in their future.
And Dave, on top of that too, just to add to exactly what you were saying there's an equity side of this too that we've got to be very careful of. And it showed up with social media, and now it's going to be showing up with AI too. I mean, think about it. Back when we started saying we don't want kids to touch social media, we don't want teachers to touch social media, we don't want anybody to have anything to do with it. Now, here we are today. Look at all of the different professions that use social media in some way, shape, or form. Now it's become a regular part of society, and it's also a big part of business too. And so think about the students who are shunned from social media versus the ones where the teachers said, hey, let's talk to kids about this. And then they start to get some of those lessons and some of those fundamentals from an early age, and they're thinking about it. By the time they get out into college in the real world, it's not a brand new thing to them anymore, and it's an advantage. Now, here we are with artificial intelligence. And I remember when New York City public schools blocked ChatGPT from everybody. They were one of the first ones. And, when you're one of the first ones to act, you get a lot of the attention. And I just remember thinking, what about that 10-year-old kid we were just talking about? That 10-year-old kid who in 8 years, if they go through New York City public schools and they have had zero exposure to AI, they haven't had a single teacher model how to use it responsibly. They haven't gotten to engineer prompts and have any discussions about ethical and responsible use of it. They get into college and it becomes part of college in whatever form it may be. Or 4 years later, they get out in the real world and they go, I don't know how to use that in a job interview. And all of a sudden they can't get work. And I've also got to think with all of the, barriers that some of the kids in some of the New York City public schools have to deal with, this is just yet another barrier, but it could be an opportunity to set them ahead, to give them an advantage. Now, that decision isn't, forever. We're going to cross our fingers that hopefully they change their ways and at least let the teachers have access to it. If not, find ways to get AI in the hands of students too. But yeah, whenever we start to do that, we start to put kids at a disadvantage. And when you're talking about, especially with populations that are already marginalized for a variety of reasons, when we start to put them even farther behind, that's creating problems, and that's creating the divide. It's making the divide worse than it already is.
Yeah, well said. And so, as we're kind of wrapping up here, Matt, first of all, congratulations on book number 6. If you are listening to this, if you're intrigued by the conversation, whether you're on the skeptical side or whether for this side, either way, Matt does a wonderful job of addressing these issues in his book. Go out, pick up the book, AI for Educators. I think you're going to be super pleased with it. I think you're going to be, your eyes are going to be kind of opened and you're going to feel seen. Whatever concerns you might have or whatever things you're looking for, I think you're going to feel seen and heard in the book. And so pick up Matt's book. And Matt, good luck to you in Denver, Colorado.
Thank you.
And I know that you're going to be in front of audiences of lots of decision makers. And so I'm excited for you to be able to have that impact on them and then for them to go out back into their school systems and hopefully have a better take on what could be done with this technology. So that's a super important thing I think that you're doing. And if people want to get in contact with you other than picking up the book, what's the best place to get involved with Matt Miller?
Well, the best and easiest place is probably just to go to the Ditch That Textbook website, which is at ditchthattextbook.com. It's the place that I've been, blogging and writing about technology and education for more than 10 years at this point. It's got all of my contact information. I'm all over social media, probably most active on Twitter, where you can find me at jmattmiller. Letter J, Matt with 2 T's, Miller. Feel free to go track me down out there and we'll get connected there. And that's another place we can stay connected.
Yeah, if you're not on Matt's email list, like I don't even know what you're doing. Get on Matt's email list. He gives away so much stuff. It's incredible. And you will also get notifications of things like Ditch Summit, which is free. The email list is free. Like Matt gives away so much free stuff. It's almost incredible. And so make sure you get onto the email list and then you'll find out about all this stuff. Just getting on the email list, you'll get free ebooks even. Not only will you get free ideas and strategies every week, a couple times a week, but you're going to get free ebooks right off at the top. And then you'll also hear about Ditch Summit and all that. If you haven't been a part of Ditch Summit yet, free professional development from some of the top educational minds in the world coming right into your home. We call it pajama PD sometimes because you can watch it in your pajamas. You don't have to go to any conference. You don't have to buy plane tickets or a hotel room. Matt brings them right to you through your computer screen. And so it's fantastic. And Matt, let me see if I can do this off the top of my head. This is going to be tough. Okay, so we have ditch that textbook, ditch that homework, don't ditch that tech, do more with Google Classroom, tech like a pirate, and AI for educators. Did I get them all? I got them all.
You got it. Nicely done. I'm very impressed.
Yes. And by the way, Matt has his own line of books as a part of DBC Inc. And so Matt curates and produces his own line of books. This is produced by Matt on the Ditch That Textbook line. And so congratulations to Matt on being in charge of that line and pulling this all together. And man, is that cover beautiful, and all credit to Matt for that one. It's a gorgeous cover.
Yeah, that may be one of my favorite ones right there. That font, I mean, you can see I'm making t-shirts with it. Like, I'm going to get a lot of good use out of this font, I think.
Yeah. I think you need to get some of those t-shirts up on a site somewhere, Matt, so I can get some and I can start repping this message. And I want some Tomorrow Glasses shirts. Let's go.
There you go. Okay. Yep. I'm on it. Well, let's make this happen.
Okay. Sounds good. Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. And the fact that you spend a little bit of your time with us on Thursday nights means the world to us. And so we appreciate it. And Matt, of course, thank you so much for spending some of your time here tonight too.
My pleasure.
And Tara, we're glad that everything went well. We can't wait to get you back on here and hear all the details about a super speedy and fast recovery. So congratulations to you for having the surgery go so well too. Bye, everybody.